Institute and had the privilege to organize this event. I'm so excited to welcome both the students and the panelists that we have here today. And to kick us off, I'm really excited to hear from this person. She is the Chief of Staff of Global Head Solutions at HP, Paula Santamaria.
Buenos días. Can you hear me okay? First and foremost, thank you for being here with us today, some of us virtually, some of us in person. And a special thanks to the Institute of Hispanic Culture and Peace for hosting this great event. My name is Paula Santamaria, and I was born and raised in Bogotá, Colombia. Para atrás, ni para tomar impulso. No step back, not even to build momentum, said my dad as we landed in Newark, New Jersey. Not quite Disney. But our life changed overnight. We had to leave everything behind in Colombia to ensure our safety. So even though we no longer had anything, I realized that we had everything because we had each other. From the beginning, like many immigrant parents, my parents focused on education. They taught me that we were now living in the U.S., and education is a way to unlock opportunity. They did their best to find the best public school they could so that I could get a quality education. But the first school I attended in 4th grade didn't have an ESL program, and I did not know English. The only other people in the whole school that spoke Spanish were my cousins. I distinctly remember sitting in class trying to force my brain to understand the new language, and it was very frustrating. And while I look young, I'm not that young. This was pre-internet, okay? So I had to do my homework with the Spanish-English dictionary. It was hard. And my parents also had to reinvent themselves and try to break back into their respective careers. So we had to follow opportunity. This meant that we had to move on. My education was fractured. I went to 7 schools between 10 and 18. It was hard. The classes were challenging. I didn't speak the language, and it was hard to make friends. But I heard my parents' words ringing in my head. Para atrás ni para tomar impulso. I relied very heavily on mentors along the way. Every time I meet or hear someone that I find fascinating, I ask to meet with them. Asking for help and getting to know people's stories is the best thing you can do for your careers, and it's been an extremely important part of mine in unlocking opportunity. I did well enough in high school to receive a full-ride scholarship to University of Houston, where I majored in political science because I dreamt of being a lawyer. Through an internship at U of H, I met a woman who became a mentor and ended up recommending me for a role in the Obama administration. I had just become an American citizen, and I was being recruited by the White House. It didn't make sense. It was beyond my wildest dreams. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that someone that had to flee their country and start over while trying to navigate a place that was so complicated between school and college, professional career, could get a job with the White House. It didn't seem real. When I went to interview, I was nervous, and every person that I met that was interviewing went to higher-ranked schools, seemed to have better experience, and just seemed smarter. That is imposter syndrome. And you know how I know? Because not everyone got jobs, but I did. And I realized at that point how much my self-limiting beliefs were holding me back from opportunity. And there are people you encounter that make this even harder. When I was in school, I reached out to the pre-law advisor so that I could figure out what I could do to get into law school. Even though I had almost a 4.0, he didn't even look at his computer. When I told him my plans, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, honey, this isn't like Legally Blonde." Just because, based on my looks, he wrote me off. He decided that I didn't look like the typical lawyer, so I shouldn't pursue that path. And I was torn. I had worked towards this for a long time, so I decided that I wasn't going to let this person crush my dreams. He's no longer with the school. Sometimes you just have to agitate when necessary, and sometimes you have to raise hell. But then, life threw another amazing curveball, which I could not have predicted. I was invited to the Oval Office to be recognized by President Obama. President Obama, y'all. Like, after speaking with him, taking a picture and leaving, when I was able to stop shaking, as I walked through the long sidewalk towards the back of the gate of the White House, I realized that my imposter syndrome was still present, and I still fight it today. But I made a promise to myself that day, and that I was always going to do my best to push through it, and I hope I encourage you to do so as well. Since then, my career has not been linear. I've been unemployed. I worked in nonprofit. I worked in tech. I've been both happy and unhappy with jobs. I moved cities. It's been a journey. One that consistently scares me and challenges me, but it makes me feel alive. So I recommend that when you're feeling stuck or down, you find what brings you joy and you run in that direction. I strive not to limit myself, and I try to stay curious, to stay hopeful, because I like to help others, and you can't fill from an empty cup. And while the moments in DC were incredible, I refuse to think that I have peaked. I keep striving for more. I'll be attending MIT Sloan to get my MBA so that I can further support our community. I want to help get more entrepreneurs from our communities to get access to funding so that the world starts to represent our experiences and communities even more, for us, by us. And even applying was hard. It took me 5 years of hard work. I took the test 6 times. I was determined that it wasn't going to be easy. But let me tell you, it pays off. Don't let anyone ever allow you to doubt yourself. Whatever you hope to do and achieve, it's possible. Dream big and stay focused. The path is messy, but it's worth it. And don't forget, para atrás ni para tomar impulso.
Thank you so much for that inspiring story of self. I personally was very inspired by those words, and I think it's an honor that we had you opening our event today. So thank you so much for everything. So our itinerary is going to change a little bit because one of our panelists is running late. So we're actually going to start with our time management / emotional resilience panel. If I can welcome Humberto Alanis from Miles Ahead Scholars, Marysela Garza from HISD, and Joseline Garret from Enbridge HISD. All right. So, college can be a really challenging experience for a lot of students. For many, this is going to be the first time that you're going to be on your own. You're not going to have parents telling you what to do. You're not going to have teachers checking up on you. And that's going to be really, really exciting, right? Being on your own for the first time. But it can also be really, really scary. Being on your own brings a lot of responsibilities, and you're learning how to be an adult for the first time. To talk about some of these challenges, let's start with you, Marysela. So you went to UT for undergrad, and you actually switched your majors, right? And you went from engineering to education. And then you actually went back because you're like, I don't know if this is what I want to do, right? And now you want to pursue your MBA. So can you tell us what that journey has been for you? And what are some of the time management and healthy habits that you've built that has helped you along the way?
Yes, of course. I'm pretty good at production. Okay.
Call teacher?
Yeah. Hi, well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to be here. Like Mariela has said, I'm currently a teacher with HISD, and I actually went to HISD schools growing up until my parents moved out to Haiti, and then I had really, really just incredible teachers that pushed me to apply to UT, and I got in with a presidential scholarship to UT, and so I went with my tuition completely covered. I started off in engineering and quickly learned that professors, some are phenomenal, do not get paid to know your name and to make sure you pass the class. Some will definitely reach out, and I've had amazing professors and mentors, but it's very, very much you are learning to be an adult. You are learning to manage your time. You are learning to fall and get up and fall and get up and fall and get up a lot. And so I definitely fell quite a few times, and it took a lot for me to take a step back and understand what I wanted to do with my future. And I graduated high school around the time that a lot of teachers were being let go, and I decided to apply to engineering because I was scared. At first I thought, I'm going to go into teaching because job security, I love working with people, and teaching is great. And then I saw half of my favorite teachers being let go, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have a job. And so I went into engineering thinking, this is what I want to do. I switched my major after my second year, realizing when you're not passionate about something, the drive to go to class every day and do your homework and go to office hours, it's not there. And I switched to education because I knew that I wanted to help students that looked like me, that wanted to help other students that looked like me, and it was quite possibly the best decision I could have ever made. I came back to Houston to teach at HISD, and like Mariela has mentioned, I decided, you know what, I'm going to give engineering another go. And I think it was the thought that I thought I failed that led me to continue to try. I was like, no, it's not going to beat me. And so I went back, I took all the courses that I couldn't pass at first, and I made straight A's. I made straight A's in all those courses, calculus 1, 2, 3, physics 1, physics 2, chemistry 1, chemistry 2. Straight A's, things I couldn't do when I was 18 and 19. And I was like, how is this different? How is this happening now? And I was an adult. That was the difference. I learned how to be an adult. When I was 18 and 19, I was struggling, not knowing how to manage my time, not knowing how to push myself to that degree. And I think really understanding how to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be successful, developing habits where you know, I have to get up. I can't miss my 8 a.m. because if I miss one class, I'm behind a week. I didn't register that when I was 18 and 19. I was thinking, I'm in college, this is going to be fine, I'll catch up, I have time to catch up. But then I wouldn't use that time to catch up because I had terrible time management skills. And so you definitely learn to really push yourself to a degree that you didn't think was possible. You know, at this point, when I was making these straight A's, I had a full-time job in teaching, which is really difficult. And so I had a full-time job. I was also trying to finish Teach for America, which Mariela and I did together. And I was taking 8 or 9 hours depending on the semester of courses. I made time, right? I managed the time. I didn't miss that 8 a.m. class. I didn't miss that 8 to 3 p.m. Saturday chemistry class and lab because I wanted that A. And I remember thinking, you build the habits that make you successful when you want to be successful. Push yourself to that degree, to that point when you really want something. After I finished all the prerequisites, I was actually accepted into the biochemistry department at UH. And that's when I decided, I did it, right? I wanted to prove to myself that it wasn't because I wasn't smart enough or I wasn't good enough, but I just had really bad management skills when I was 18 and 19. And I think that acceptance was good enough for me to decide, I don't want to be in engineering after all. I think I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And if you want it badly enough, you can do anything. And you can set your mind and you can achieve those goals for sure. And as Mariela saying now, I'm pursuing my MBA and hopefully going to be in education for the long term as an administrator one day and hopefully teach students that they can also achieve those goals with the correct time management and organizational skills.
Thank you so much, Marysela. So we have just some logistical things that we need to change because of streaming.
Oh, okay.
So for the next panelist, if you could make sure to use a microphone because they can't hear you. And then if you can actually have the students, if you can fill in the first row, that would be great because you can. Oh, yeah. Sorry for really appreciate it. Sorry for those changes. Awesome. Great. So now can we hear from Humberto? You shared with me when you first got to college, it was not easy and you actually wanted to return home. Can you share what that experience was like for you and how you overcame those feelings of doubt? What lessons did you learn from it?
Yeah, buenos días. That's a little bit different, right? Can I just start off with a show of hands? The students, the high school students in the room, can I see who are the high school students? Okay, I definitely want to see who I'm talking to, right? But Mariela, thank you. I think it's funny that you say that college was difficult at first because the reality is that college was difficult all 4 years that I was there. Okay, and I think it's important to go into college with that mindset that hey, it might get a little bit easier, but it's going to be tough pretty much along the way. I think that I think your story is very powerful. That we have the capacity to do great things. It's just that when we get there, we're a little young and we may not have honestly it's really the brain capacity, right? I know for men, right, as a man myself, your frontal lobe doesn't finish developing until you're 25, 26. And that is the area where you have decision making, right? But I want to say that whatever the case may be, anything that is worth it in life is not going to be given to you. Right? It's not going to be easy. We have to go out and we have to earn it. And I think there's 6 characteristics for a college-ready student. Right? The very first characteristic is we need to have grit. We need to be able to have the quality to persevere over obstacles, because so many obstacles are going to be thrown our way. And you know, the amazing thing is that I'm almost certain that y'all as young people have already overcome so many things. And y'all as young people already have that perseverance within you and that grit to overcome the obstacles to get to our end goal. The second thing that we need to have is we need to have curiosity. If you're interested in, let's say, engineering, we need to be able to dive into deep into engineering. If you're interested in figuring out a cure for a certain disease, right, very, very relevant to our time today, we need to be able to dive into that, because that's going to fuel that perseverance, right? We need to have purpose. Why are we here? Okay? Am I here to be able to establish some sort of technological advance that's going to help, you know, millions of people throughout the world? Am I here for my abuelita or my abuelito, mi papá, mi mamá, que vinieron a este país para una mejor vida? Like, why am I here in college? Right? And that's going to really allow us to determine our purpose. We need to be able to have a little bit of self-control. We may not, it might not be the best idea to go out and you know, go a little party with your friends on a Thursday. We may need to stay behind to study because we have a test the following day. Or it may not be the best idea to binge watch whatever show you're watching on Netflix, because we need to start writing our essay, you know, 4 or 5 days in advance rather than the day before or the night before. We need to be able to have gratitude. I think a lot of times we see our life and we see what we're lacking, and yes, that's important. But I think when we do that, we see our life from a negative light. And I think it's important to see what we do have, so that we can shift our mindset and see, wow, I'm blessed enough to be where I'm at. This is going to fuel, right, that positivity in my life, and it's going to propel me forward. It's going to allow me to feel that grit as well. And the last thing that I think we need is intellectual humility. I think I'm certain that by y'all being here, I have, and those that are watching at home, I'm certain that y'all are great students, right? Who's going to be up on a Saturday to talk about college? Y'all are, and that's fueling this grit that I speak of at the beginning. But the reality is that no lo sabemos todo, right? We don't know it all, and that's okay. We're going to show up to classes. We're going to struggle, but we need to be humble about what we know and humble about what we don't know. ¿Verdad? Esa plática con nuestros papás. Sí, ya sé, right? I know. And we think that we're young people and we know it all. And to this day, I'm like, man, one lesson that I know about life is that I'm going to keep learning day in and day out, no matter how old I get. So just having that intellectual humility is also very important. But see, it was very hard. It was super hard. I'm not a native Houstonian. I'm from the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas. And for those of us that don't know about the Valley, it's a very homogenous community. So my high school is 99.7% Hispanic. I also went to the University of Texas. And when I was at UT, transparently and very openly, I had never seen that many white people in my life. And that was very uncomfortable for me. There was just something about being in those spaces that I just did not feel welcome. And I had to find my community. I had to find mi comunidad, and my community was in the Latino community at UT Austin. I ended up joining a fraternity. I'm a brother of Sigma Lambda Beta, Latino-based fraternity at UT Austin, and those were my people. We had very similar backgrounds: first-generation college students, immigrants, English language learners, low income. Right? We were all, you name it. We were all kind of on the same boat, and we supported each other. And they helped me alongside these 6 characteristics that I tell you. They helped me propel, and in 4 years, I was able to graduate. The very first semester, I was ready to go back home. I was like, this is not for me. But what happened is that so many people where I'm from ended up going back home, and I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let myself be one of those people. And I'm hoping that they're doing amazing things, but I hope y'all are the group of people that are able to pull it through. So I hope that we're able to start thinking about what is my purpose. Am I really curious about what I'm going into? Where are all the times in my life where I've demonstrated grit? Who is my community? And those things combined will really help us get through the finish line.
Thank you so much for your words, Humberto. And then to finish us off in this panel, we have Joseline. And can you share a bit about your story? One of the hardest things about college is being away from home. And there, like Humberto said, there's a certain culture shock when you first get to college. So can you share a little bit about what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, buenos dias a todos. Just really excited to be here. But yeah, so I am from Houston, Texas. I was born on the north side. And like Humberto said, I came from a pretty homogenous community. Everybody in my street looked like me. My parents are Salvadorian, and like really weirdly, all of our neighbors were also Salvadorian and Mexican. So I ate a lot of pupusas and tacos growing up. But yeah, and my high school also looked the same. So I went to a small college right outside of Pittsburgh, Washington Jefferson College, and it was a predominantly white institution. So I was excited to go to college. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go experience like life in Pennsylvania, and I'm going to see snow, and it's going to be fun. And I get there, and yeah, it was different, but the culture shock was so real for me. Like Humberto said, I've never seen that many white people in my, in my classes where I lived. And so it was really hard for me. Just connecting, and they were asking me like, "Oh, what country are you from?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from Texas." Like, what? And I'm from Houston.
That's a country.
Yeah, that's a country in itself, yes. But yeah, I'm from the United States, and so it was just really interesting. And I didn't feel like I belonged. To be completely transparent, I remember my first semester. I just struggled a lot. I miss home. I'm very close with my small family. I called home a lot, and I remember telling my mom, I was like, I don't think this is for me. And she was like, you know what? You're there, termina. Like, no vengas a casa, estás ahí por un propósito. Like, let's do this. We're supporting you from afar, and we know you can do this. And so, thankfully, I had parents that really pushed me to just continue on my journey, but it was difficult. And I remember finishing my first semester with a 1.9 GPA. I was put on academic probation, and I was like, I will not let this happen again. I'm going to push through. I'm going to seek my professors. And I think that's something that was really hard for me too, because in high school, I just, I did well, and I could do it all of it by myself, and I could figure out all the answers, right? And college was very difficult, all 4 years. And it was okay to ask for help. And I did that all the following years, and I was able to get on the dean's list every semester after that. And so, again, you are going to fail, like the Marysela said, and it's all about you getting back up. And it's okay if you get that D, but it's how you're going to persist through that. But in terms of just like being away from home, that will probably be the toughest part. I think as Latinos, like we love our families and we love our communities and stuff, but something that I always reminded myself, I'm like, this is not for the long term. This is only 4 years that I'll be here. And I'm like, when is the next time where I can just pack my bags and just go and live in Pennsylvania, right? So I took my chances when I was there. I made the best out of it. I actually also like studied abroad. So I lived a year in Ecuador in Quito. And that was amazing. And again, I miss my family so much. I called often. I'm like, I don't know if I could be in Ecuador. I want to go back to Houston. Again, time and time again, my parents are like, you're there for a reason. Make the best out of it. And sure enough, I didn't want to come back to the United States. But yeah, so again, just giving yourself that opportunity to feel just what you're feeling. It's okay to feel upset that you're like away from home. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to miss home a lot. It's totally normal. Sometimes when I don't see my mom, I'm like, my mom only lives 10 minutes away from me and I still miss her. It's okay. It happens all the time, right? But it really, really just taking the time to take advantage of your opportunities wherever you are, because that's going to get you far. Whether getting you an internship, whether studying abroad, whether doing great in a class, it will take you really far. So taking advantage of the opportunities is really important.
Thank you so much, Joseline. Can we give a round of applause for our three panelists?
I just wanted to say something to reiterate what all the panelists have been saying, and just because this was a time management and organization panel, I do want to just say, don't miss class. Don't do it. It's so tempting. It really is. It's super tempting, but it's probably the one thing that will just help you succeed more than anything is showing up. When you get up and show up, that is what's going to help you more than anything, is showing up. That's half the battle, I promise you. And then you build these great habits because you showed up. So don't do it. It's so tempting, I know, but show up.
Thank you, Marysela. If I can welcome the first generation panel now, we can do a transition. Thank you. All right, so with a raise of hands for our high school students, how many of you are going to be the first ones in your family to go to college? Right? That's amazing. From our audience, how many of you were the first ones in your family to go to college? Right? So we are the blueprint, right? We're the first ones. We're the ones that are going to be the example for the rest of our family. But with that comes a lot of challenges, right? You don't have anybody else to show you an example of what that's like. So to talk about the challenges about being the first generation college student, we have Mariana Quitero from Klein ISD, Belinda Moreira, a full-time MBA student at Rice University, and Juan Holmes, a professional MBA student at Rice University. So Belinda, let's start with you. What was your experience being the first one in your family to go to college? How did you juggle the responsibilities of being a college student for the first time, but also all of the responsibilities you still had to your family?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, as a, first student in my family, being the first person in my family, out of all my cousins, out of everyone, right? I was the first to go to college. There was definitely a moment where, I was really tempted to stay home, right? I got a scholarship to go to school in Washington, D.C., at Georgetown University. So for me, it was.
Yeah, your mic, sorry.
It's off. There you go. Sorry. So for me, as a first generation student going to Georgetown University, it was huge for me, right? I mean, I was my dream school, and I was so excited to, get to have that opportunity. But at the same time, my parents had always needed me, right? As the oldest, you're the ones who are, helping them with different documentation, answering questions for them, Googling things for them, finding answers. And I was doing that not just for my parents, but for my grandparents, for, my younger cousins, for my tios and my tias. Like, I was always that person. And so for me, I had a lot of guilt. Like, okay, I get an opportunity to go to this really great place, and I know it's important for my future and my family's future. But they also need me, right? My dad had just started a business, and I was just like, well, what if he needs this, or what if he needs that, right? And the more I thought about it, the more I just felt guilty, right? So it was a hard decision to go to DC, but I had to do it, right? And when I was there, I remember that first semester just feeling so lost, right? I was leaving my family for the first time ever in a completely new place where a lot of students did not look like me. There's a very small percentage of Latino students and first generation students at that. So it was culture shock. It was a lot of things, and then there's this guilt that I'm not there with my family. That I'm not spending my Sundays with them. That there's questions or things they may need that I can't address. Do we have money? Are they getting? Are they able to buy food? Things like that, where I was just like constantly thinking about it. And my parents had very strictly told my sister, don't tell Belinda anything. If things are happening at home, she needs to focus on school. And my sister comes back and tells me, they don't want me to tell you stuff because, you need to focus on school. And I was just like, oh God, okay. So, that first semester, I really did say, okay, well, maybe it's time to go back home. And I told my parents, I'm going to transfer back home. I'll transfer to Rice. I'll transfer to U of H. Like, I just need to be closer to y'all. And they told me, no, you have to stay, right? They're like, you got a scholarship. You have this opportunity, and we're not going to pay for you to come back home, so good luck. And it was some real tough love, and, you know, I'm so glad they did it, but it hurt, right? It hurt them. They said that they cried after. It hurt me. I definitely had some tears because I was just like, I just felt so overwhelmed. So for me, a big part of my journey for school is I sought mental health, right? I went and I started doing therapy. I went and I started having conversations about this because we're not going to be the only ones. Like, I mean, you heard all the other panelists in the first panel talking about that culture shock, talking about being away from their families. So for me, you know, I started going to therapy. I started talking about these things, and with that, building different kinds of relationships with my family and finding new ways to, you know, be able to focus on myself, right? Because it's an investment on you, right? You're investing in your future, and when you invest in yourself, you're also investing in them. So it really was a moment where I had to kind of refocus and reframe how I was looking at everything, so that I could really be my best self through college, and now getting a graduate degree. You know, I know that every time that I look for opportunities for myself to grow as a professional, it's not just for me, it's for everyone before me, right? And so I think that that's powerful, and when we look at it that way and think about it from not the sense of I'm not able to support or help, but really I'm doing something bigger than what I could have imagined for my family, it really does make all the difference.
Thank you so much, Belinda. Now we're going to move on to Mariana.
So your story has an added layer. Not only are you a first-generation college student, but you're also a DACA student. Can you talk more what that was like for you, and what advice do you have for other DACA students getting ready for college?
Hi, yes, my name is Mariana Quitero. I am currently a dual language teacher at Klein ISD, and yeah, I mean, I am the stereotypical undocumented story, right, where you don't find out you're undocumented until you're applying for college, and you're like, oh, hold on a second, so you mean I don't do FAFSA? I can't get federal loans? I don't get the help that all of my other classmates get? And so that was very difficult, and that was very hard, especially because I was very high achieving. I performed very well. From the moment that I arrived here from Mexico when I was 7, the school was giving me awards for scoring hundreds in all of my state tests, even when I didn't speak a lick of English and I didn't understand what anybody around me was saying. And so I thought it was incredibly unfair that I, being so dedicated with my parents, who are also undocumented, being very dedicated and holding low-wage jobs and doing their best to give me the best education that they could, that I couldn't go to college with the easiness that everybody else could. So I went to my counselors, and I always started the conversation being very open. Once I found out that I was undocumented, I was very open about it. I did not see it as a weakness because it was my reality, and I said, hey, I am undocumented, and the next day over here was shh. Now, DACA came on like 2012, 2010. I graduated high school 2013. It was relatively new. The supports that we have now for DACA students were not in place then. And it was a very politically charged thing to say that you were undocumented, that you were not like everybody else. So my counselors shushed me and didn't help me. They didn't give me the support that they gave other students. And because I was undocumented, because my parents worked low-wage jobs, minimum wage jobs, we didn't have the money for me to go and get extra after-school help with my SATs. I had to learn everything from, just school, from what I had learned. I didn't have the $50, $60 to go to Barnes & Noble and get the study guide. It wasn't a thing. Like, we don't have that kind of money. I went to my professors and I was like, hey, I need letter of recommendations. I'm getting letters left and right from all of these universities, Harvard, MIT, Cornell, and I have universities that are willing to fly me out and like house me for free just so that I get to meet them. Can you give me a letter of recommendation? And they're like, sure, tell me your story, right? That's the thing they tell you, tell me your story. Well, I'm undocumented. Shh. How am I going to get the help that I need to navigate a system that wasn't made for me as an undocumented or a documented student? But I found a way. I just didn't give up. And I got private loan with the help of some friends that had citizenship because my parents couldn't help me, even if they had wanted to, because they didn't have that citizenship. I couldn't get loans anywhere. There weren't any scholarships that I could apply for. I didn't, as a first-gen college student, they didn't know how to help me navigate the system, and that was very frustrating for us, and it created a very frustrating environment at home. Found a way, made it to New York, went to St. John's University, and I was like, oh my god, Queens. This is like the most diverse place on earth, second to Houston. Right? This is going to be great. I'm going to meet all these types of people. Like, my world is going to expand. It's going to be fantastic. And I was the only person in the room who always spoke out for Latinos and for undocumented folk and for documented students. I fully acknowledge that being documented doesn't necessarily mean that we all share a story. We all have different levels of comfortability with it. But it felt like just no one had that perspective of how hard it was to navigate the world when you couldn't do a whole lot, right? Like, I have to apply to get my work authorization, even now, every 2 years. I felt like I was limited to live my life every 2 years, and still I sometimes feel that way. But I became that voice, and I was always that kid that went to class, and I sat in the front. I never missed anything. I was a bit of a teacher's pet because I knew that that was my shot. That was my chance. Being in a place like that for a person like me, it was incredible. And everything I did, I was incredibly proud of myself, and I was incredibly proud of my parents for just allowing me to be so far away. I had never been away from my parents. It was hard and it was tough, and at some point I felt like I was just constantly sharing the same story with people, trying to bring awareness to this university that's supposed to be one of the most diverse. But I made it, right? I graduated early. I graduated with a major and 2 minors. I made the dean's list every time. I try to keep very focused. I try to look around me, and I try to remind myself that we don't always make it like that because we have people like my counselors or my teachers that would shush us, and it wouldn't allow for us to get to places like that. Going to college after that opened the doors for a lot of opportunities. I joined Teach for America to become a teacher. I'm still at my placement school. I was team leader this year for my team, being the youngest team member in 1st grade. I was given a pilot program for dual language, right? I teach because I see myself in my students. Having that college experience, learning from all of my professors just really expanded my view of the world. And I just, if you feel like you can relate to the story, if you feel like you're just another stereotype, don't. Try your best, do your best, and like Belinda say, like, you have to do it for you. You just really have to get out there, and you have to seize every opportunity that you get. Because once you get to college, you start to realize the world can be a very difficult place for communities like ours. And so we need to just seize the opportunities that are presented to us. But don't give up, go to class, sit up front, take all the opportunities that you can.
Thank you so much for your vulnerability, Belinda. And now we're going to end off with Juan. Can you share a little bit about your experience being the first one in your family to go to college and what you learned from it?
Definitely. At first, I'd like to thank Ms. Camarillo, the Institute. I'd like to thank Rice University. I'd like to thank the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And most importantly, I'd like to thank my family for allowing me to be here today to speak to all of you. 13 years ago, I never imagined that I would be here today. My mother is from a small town in Southern California. My father is from a small town in Georgia. And despite not going to college themselves, the decades of sacrifice on the path of my parents, on the behalf of my parents, allows me to be here today to speak with you all. I never would have imagined that I had the ability to succeed not only academically, and also professionally in an international environment. I've been able and privileged to travel the world, to live and work internationally, and I'm here today with all of those years of experience, speaking multiple languages, and I feel very privileged to be here. I think what really helped in terms of the things that my family and community did not have was finding those people who do and having them as mentors. And fortunately for you students that come here today, that are here today, and those that are listening online, you have those people in front of you. All of the speakers, the Institute, all of these organizations, we are here to help you. We are measured by how we help those from where we come from. Not just the people that we look like, not just the people that speak like us and act like us, but it's also important to be able to communicate, and in education we call it stretch assignments, to be able to stretch our horizons. And the most important lesson for that is to take that chance. I've had the opportunity to, through my program, pivot from education to IT, technology. And I've met some of the greatest minds in the world, from MIT, from Oxford Business School, from Harvard, a small town kid, conversing, talking, networking, and learning and gaining skills. Take the time to network, take the time to get contact information. You're here today. When you leave today, have a list of people who should be all of us, who you can reach out to assist you in anything that you're doing, academically and professionally. You've taken the first step. You're here. And I hope in 5, 7, 10, 13 years, you'll be not just in this seat, but in more important ones, in bigger ones, in bigger things. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to give you all a little 5-minute break, because I know that's been a lot of speakers, so if you want to take a break to go use the restroom, or to just kind of stretch a little bit while we transition to the next panel. right, we're gonna start in 30 seconds. Take your seat. Thank you. Okay. So for my high schoolers, with a show of hands, how many of you have heard the word networking? Is anybody brave enough to tell me what they think networking is? Go ahead.
Or like going after like new people, getting contacts, and new people to work with and stuff.
Exactly, that's exactly it. So when I was in college, I didn't even know networking was a thing. I just thought you just go to school, go to class, get good grades, and that's it. And it wasn't until like my senior year that I realized, oh, I should have been doing this since the start, right? So to talk a little bit about why networking is important, we're going to start off with Magda Reyes from Marathon Oil. If you can share a little bit about how networking has been important for you in college and in your professional career.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me today. So networking has basically gotten me to where I am now. I'm originally from Austin, Texas, but I went to college at Colorado State in Fort Collins, Colorado. And as soon as I got to college, well, let me start. My mom, she didn't know how to navigate like the education system. I was first generation as well, but she always knew to put me in these programs that I got invited to do, and she'd put me in them. And so I kind of started a lot of that in middle school and high school, just knowing about these organizations where you can go do stuff in the summer and whatnot. So when I got to college, one of the first things I did is I went to, typically the first week you're there, they'll have these big fairs where you can go and look at different organizations and kind of see what you might be interested in. And I kind of reluctantly got pulled into an organization called Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. I was an engineering major, which is I guess how I connected with them. But that's really where it started. I just got involved with the organization on campus. I made sure to go to meetings. I started going to conferences every year. I went in the summer, I would try to do stuff as well, networking. But really in college, I just met students from so many different colleges, and it was just really cool to know that there's other students that are doing engineering and are going through the same struggle that I was going through when it came to school or really anything. So that was kind of the college experience for me, was just really staying very involved in organizations. I will say that as a college student, you just always have to remember that your priority is to graduate, to get good grades, because you do need a good GPA to get a good job. So you do have to balance how much time you put into organizations. I will say I know a lot of people who get overwhelmed, and sometimes they put so much time into something that you get burnt out. So it's important to balance that. Now, getting into my professional career, coming out of college, I got a job just through my career center at school, and I moved to California, and I lived in California for 8 years. But again, when I got to California, I think because I grew up, thanks to my mom being part of organizations, right away when I got there, I looked at, okay, what is available where I'm living? What can I get involved with? Went out. Got involved with a couple of different organizations for Latinas in California, one of them being Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, and then Latina Leaders of Kern County, because I was living in Bakersfield, California, which is part of Kern County. I got involved with them and really just continued my involvement, met so many women. But getting to the job, I do want to just say that there's so many things you can always get involved with, but it's always important for you to know where are you trying to get to, right? And so I always knew that I wanted to be involved in the community, so I always got involved with organizations that helped typically anywhere from K-12 students learn about engineering, science, mathematics, all that. But then also when I started working, it kind of changed a little bit, right? Because at that point now I'm trying to get into my career, I'm trying to learn what I need to do. So now you're talking about kind of shifting gears and getting networking within your industry. So now I start networking through my industry. So there's so many other organizations that I learned about that apply to the oil industry, petroleum industry. So I started networking that way. And realistically, once you get into a job, you also want to network in your company. You need to start meeting people in your company. I think it's really easy sometimes for us to be really shy, not want to talk to people, not want to bother people, but you just have to. And for me, the way that I did that was really just kind of going around and saying hi, maybe grabbing coffee, initiating those conversations. And I can tell you now, I'm on my third job since I graduated college. I graduated back in 2006, and every job after my first job, I got because of somebody that I knew. I didn't have to apply. I didn't even have to really apply because I wasn't looking for a job. They'd be like, "Hey, I think you'd be a good match. You should apply for this." I was like, "Okay, sure. Here's my resume." But that's how my last 2 jobs have been. Is I met him because of somebody that I just happened to talk to, somebody that I happened to work with, and it's been a great experience. And it's really just gotten me here. One, it got me back to Texas, which I do enjoy Texas, and of course, just got me to Houston, which is a great city, and I'm really enjoying being in Houston. So.
Thank you so much, Magda. We're going to hand it over to Darlene. She is a rates and certificate advisor at Enbridge. And you have a unique story, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how networking helped you in college and in your professional career?
Okay, so I'm going to try not to get emotional. So, just like Mariela, I didn't know what networking was. I'm first generation. My friends didn't know how to help me. They had a limit on what school meant, networking and scholarships and all that stuff. I always was really active in school, in high school. So in high school, they kept advertising this internship. It's called co-op for a business. It was like Spectra Energy. It was an oil and gas company to do admin work as a senior. So you will go half the time to school and half the time to the company. I needed money, so I applied. I got the job. So when I was there, usually I'm a really friendly person. I will go and one of my job duties was to like deliver them out. So I didn't realize I was networking, but I would like stop on every office and ask like every person, how are you doing? How was your weekend? What are your plans? Who are you? Like, I just wanted to know who were the people that I was working, right? I was a 16, 17-year-old kid. How did you get your job? Because I didn't know any of this, right? So they just started helping me. I'm like, how do I apply for college? So they became my network. I didn't realize they were my network, but to me, there were people that had a job, and I wanted to find out how they did it. So I did the co-op program for a year. I was in the accounting department, and all they kept telling me is like, well, accounting, you always had a job. So I was like, okay, accounting it is. So I'm going to go to school for accounting. And then the year came up. I applied for school. I was accepted to University of Texas in San Antonio. I got a full scholarship. I think almost a full scholarship. I was short on $1,800 for my tuition, and room and board wasn't covered, so that meant I had to take out loans. I was maxed out. I was still short $1,800, and you're short, basically, you don't pay tuition, you won't make it. So I shared this story. I used to report to the controller of accounting. The controller of accounting is basically the person that oversees the entire department. There's about 60, 70 people. So I used to work really close to his admin. I used to report to her. She used to give me like my job duties. I shared this off to her 3 days before my co-op program was going to end. I didn't realize, and I'm never going to forget her, Miss Yolanda, sent out an email to the entire department, and I'm going to try not to cry, telling them and sharing the story that I was short $1,800. So in 3 days, they came up with $2,000. And I mean, I was a 17-year-old kid. That $2,000, I had never seen that much money in my life. You usually know when on your last day, they'll give you $100, $200. Like, it's known, right? I mean, we were 8 high school students in the company. So we all knew we were going to get money. But for my goodbye party, Miss Yolanda gave me 2 envelopes. I'm never going to forget them. Like a blue one that said Provision Confidential and another one. And I put them in my little locker. And she's like, no, we have to go to the conference room and you have to open them. She was so adamant that I had to open this envelope. I opened this envelope, and the first thing I see is a check from the controller, a $500 check from his personal account. This man that I had been knowing for a year found out my story. They didn't know me outside of work. They didn't know who I was. The second check was $350 from a manager. I was like, oh my God, like this is almost $900. And there was a lot of money behind it. And then there was another envelope with cash. So it came to a total of $2,000. I couldn't stop crying because they didn't know who I was. They took a leap of faith in me because of the person I demonstrated to be to them in that year. Because apparently what I was doing, I was networking and building relationships with them. I was asking them how they were. I was asking questions how I went to school. I was asking them questions about their family, right? And I will remember things. I will remember their names. I left there shaking, going to the bank, and I was like, I hope I don't lose this money. I deposited. I wasn't going to see them after that. I mean, who knows? How did they even know I wasn't going to take this money and run with it and actually use it for school, right? They changed my life. Like, you have no idea how they changed my life, because I had no idea how I was going to come up with that money or if I even was going to make it to school. So every semester, after I would finish my, every time there was like a vacation, meaning Thanksgiving or Christmas, I would show up to that company and I would go visit them. I would spend an entire day, I'm not kidding, just stopping by and talking to them. I would spend hours, go to lunch with them, email them, message them, making sure that I was letting them know, hey, the money that you invested in me, because that was your money, is going somewhere. Like, I got all A's this semester. What else do you need me to do? So again, I didn't realize I was networking. I didn't realize they were watching every step I was making. I didn't realize that my parents couldn't help me financially, so I had 3 part-time jobs, and I was going to school full-time. I didn't have time to be involved in organizations. I didn't have time for all that. My mentality was like, I need to pay back this money to these people that gave me this money. So I will go visit them. So when internship came around, I applied to the company, and it was the assistant controller who interviewed me. He's like, well, Darlene, apparently we know you. I mean, we've been seeing you this past 3 years. I know who you are. Tell me, what have you actually been doing in school? I was like, oh, this, and that. I was so nervous. I only applied for one internship because there was only one company in the world that I wanted to work for. It was them. I got the internship. So networking to me helped me put my step into the door, because they knew who I was, but I still had to prove myself, right? Just because they knew me didn't mean I was going to get that internship or that interview or the job. So when I got to the internship, my mentality was like, I need to prove who I am. So I asked for more work. I will ask a lot of questions. I will try to understand why I was giving the work that I was giving. And I remember that when I started my internship, one of the things that I dealt with, like a lot of the interns used to call me, oh, she got the internship because she knows, like, the main boss. And that will hurt, because it's like, no, I got the job because they know who I am, but doesn't mean I get the full-time position. Doesn't mean I still have to prove myself, right? I felt that I had to prove myself even more because everyone thought I was the chosen one. So time came around, I proved myself, I got a full-time job with the company. They still remember me. I mean, I'm still a 17-year-old girl they know, and the moral of the story is, like, you have to build a relationship. It's more than just contacting someone and pinging them wanting a job. Is realizing that you're going to work with these people every day. Is realizing that it makes a difference. And just like Magda said, like, after that, all of my jobs have been because I built a relationship with someone and because they know me. And I still have to prove myself, but it's made it a little bit more easier. I still keep, like, so the controller retired a few years ago. I still keep in contact with him. They made a difference in my life. And I go back and I was like, whoa, I was really networking, but I just never realized it. I graduated with my MBA 2 years ago, and one of them found out that I left the company because I wanted to experience different companies, and I'm telling you, they've been in touch with me forever, but they found out I was going to graduate with my MBA, and they messaged me, and they're like, hey, you want to come back to the company? We have something outside of accounting, you'll be interested. I was like, sure. So I went and I interviewed, I proved myself, and I got the job. You just don't know who you don't know that the person that you're talking to will make a difference in your life. So just be yourself, like, try to honestly, like, show them who you are, because if it's just crazy. I don't know how else to explain it. Just building relations, to me, is not networking, it's building a relationship with people.
Thank you so much, Darlene, for that beautiful story. Now we're going to go and finish with TaQuana Williams. She's the director of academics at TNTP. How did you go about networking in college? And sorry, wrong question.
Okay, I can still answer that.
Yeah. You can. How did you go about networking? And there's an added layer now, right? With, like, social media and technological advances, who you are online is also really important, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. First of all, that's a hard story to follow. Secondly, they asked the old person about social media. But so for context, I do think networking played a huge part in even how I got into college in the first place. So my mom was a single mother. She's a teenage mom as well, but she did go to college. So I was not the first generation college student, but her concept of like, how do you get into college was she just didn't know. So for her, she was like, if you don't find a scholarship, you're going to TaQuana Community College. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But similar to your mom, my mom always had me in all the organizations. Not because she thought it was going to help me get into college, but she thought it was going to prevent me from getting pregnant. She was like, if you have no time to get pregnant, then how are you going to get pregnant? And I didn't know at the time that, like, what I was doing in all of these organizations was networking. I was sharing my story. I was getting people to know me and getting to know other people and building those relationships as well. And it ended up, one of my guidance counselors had heard, like, oh, yeah, your mom told you this. And I was like, she did tell me I'm going to TaQuana Community College. She was like, fill out this paper, have it back in my office in a week. And it was the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program. I have since I've earned that scholarship through the Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship Foundation, I'm finishing my 4th degree this summer, which is my doctorate in education. But you all, that totaled almost to $1 million that I saved because this random teacher, guidance counselor, knew my story and said, fill out this paper and have it back to me by the end of the week. And so to your point, every year after that, went back up there, was like, Miss Lauren, what you doing, girl? I was at her retirement party, like all of these things, because these people that you're building relationships see something in you and they're willing to invest time, money, and effort into you. And I don't think it was until I got into college that I realized that that was networking. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And for those of you who don't know much about sorority and fraternity life, like, you have to network with the people that are already in that organization. You have to try to find them on campus, get to know them, go to programs, talk to them at programs, things like that, for them to be like, oh, I think you uphold the ideals of our sorority or our fraternity, and be willing to, like, put that honor on you. And this is where, like, that social media aspect comes in. So when I was in college, the only social media that existed was, like, MySpace. Facebook had just started my freshman year, and you still had to, like, have your college ID in order to get a Facebook. Now 13-year-olds are on there. So social media wasn't that big, but that was still something that sororities and fraternities and any organization that you joined would look at your social media to figure out, like, okay, what is she doing on there? What is he doing on there? Is he acting crazy? What are some of the types of things that they're posting? On top of that, I also interned with the FBI. So that was something completely. They went all through my social media profile. You all think that stuff gets deleted? It doesn't. It's there. They can find it because they found it, right? And so, but I definitely, like, I still got the internship. But it's super important. And I think something that was said earlier was, like, you know, when you're 18, your frontal lobes are not fully developed. Like, your decision making isn't there. And so what makes it even harder for your generation is, like, for me, I had time to think about my post. Y'all are on live streaming. Everything is, like, immediate gratification. Anyone can have a video of you doing anything, and that is permanently online and in the social network, right? And so just being super mindful of the things that you post, whether it's visually or in written form, because that can be the make or break of whether or not you get that internship, you get in that sorority fraternity, you get that job, down to, like, when we were hiring people for Teach for America, your email address, like, should not be babygirl5432. Like, I'm not hiring you if that's your name, right? Like, your Instagram profile name should not be I'ma get your man. Like, no. You have to have that persona online that you would want people to know of you in person. And I think even in the world that I'm in today, so my LinkedIn as a teacher was horrible. It was just like, this is where I went to college, worked at Finish Line in high school, like, and I never updated it since then, because I had gotten my job from teaching always because people knew me. So finally I was like, let me update my LinkedIn, and I actually put all my degrees on here. Let me, like, put my past jobs on here. Literally 2 days later, I lie to you all not, I get a LinkedIn message from someone at TNTP like, we have a job for you. I was like, okay. Most perfect job ever. They expedited my interview. Like, I ended up working there 2 months later after that. And so it all goes to show, like, what you put online, what you put in social media matters, even at 18, even at 19, even at 20. So just be very cautious of that and make sure you create that online persona that you want people to know.
Thank you so much, TaQuana. And then we have Magda wanting to add something.
Yeah, one thing to add to what everybody said, because those are all great stories, is just one that stuck out is that you have to be prepared. Like when you get that call or when someone says, hey, I think you'd be great for this job, I can tell you for me, it's always been really important to have an updated resume. And so I remember one night I was on a job at, like, not kidding, like 2 o'clock in the morning, middle of nowhere, and I was working with some other engineers, and one of the engineers from this company was like, hey, I think you'd be really good for this job. You should apply. Send me your resume. I was like, well, I can print it out for you right now. I have it on my computer. Literally gave it to him that night. So just being prepared. And then with sharing, along with social media, I will say one thing that I kind of learned the hard way as a young engineer is when you do go to those events, let's say you go out to happy hour, you meet people, it's great to be open. It's great to be like really friendly. But just keep in mind that you don't have to share everything. You don't have to tell them everything. It's be friendly, be open, but there should be a limit, right? Because these aren't like your best friends. These aren't the people you confide in. It's people you're just trying to leave a good impression on. And lastly, whether you think people are watching or listening or not, people are. So there might be somebody somewhere that you don't even know is listening to you. For example, if you're in an office, watch what you say, because you never know who's walking down the hall, who's on the office next to you, because people are listening and they'll remember you based on what you did or what you said. So just wanted to add those things.
Thank you so much for that. And then our last panel, I'm so excited. We actually have actual college students joining us who are in college right now and are going to be talking about their experience. So we have Joe Camarillo, who's also my cousin, Sydney Rodman, and Crystal Gamboa. If y'all can come up here. And let me think this. So Joe goes to the University of Houston, Crystal also goes to the University of Houston, and Sydney goes to Reyes, right? So Joe, let's start with you. So college can be very different from high school, especially when thinking about classes and studying. Can you share a little bit about your experience with dual credit courses, also any study tips that you can share, and how did you make sure to stay on top of all of your classes? Because Joe just got into medical school. He's going to start in the fall, so he's excited.
Alright, can you hear me? Good? Alright. So the first thing I do for any class, I learned this freshman year. Like, you learn this right away, is to look at the syllabus. Like, the syllabus is going to have everything. I don't know if y'all know what the syllabus is. I think y'all should in high school, but I don't remember. But the first thing I did was look at the syllabus thoroughly. So everything you're gonna need to know for the classes in the syllabus, like the grading, the dates, or just how the class is structured. So that's like the most important thing to do once you're enrolled in a class. Like right before you're gonna start a class, look over the syllabus, and anytime you have a question, most likely the answer is gonna be on the syllabus. So that's the first thing I would do. I would also have like a planner or a calendar, and I would write all the important dates for each class, just to be on top of things. So when actually showing up to class, what I would also do is print out the notes like the night before. So professors usually post their notes on their page, so just print those out. I would print those out and take them to class and annotate them. So instead of just writing their notes all over again from a slide, I thought it was very beneficial just to listen to what they have to say, like especially important things, like just don't, you don't have to like be writing the whole time, just listen to the hard concepts and annotate on them for later. And after class, what I would do is I would cut up those those little note card things, and make my own flashcards. So I would do that in like different colors for different classes, and I would do it right after class. So like the all the materials so fresh in my mind, and I thought that was really helpful because anytime I went anywhere and I had my backpack with me, like if I had time to kill, I would just go over them, and then when like test day was approaching, I wouldn't have to be cramming. Like I wouldn't recommend cramming at all. Like if you have to, like you have to, but I would not recommend cramming. It's horrible, and you're gonna miss those small details. So if you want to get all those little details right, I definitely do recommend using flashcards. Another thing I would do is just make outlines or visuals. So if you do that, you know what you know and what you don't know, and then you can just focus on what you don't know at the end. So visuals, just make sure to do them like once you kind of got the material down. And whenever I got stuck in a hard concept, I would read the textbook, watch YouTube videos, go to tutoring, and go to the professor. So I know most of y'all think tutoring might be like just people that are struggling with school overall or just overall with the class. Like only those people go to tutoring. No, tutoring is for everyone. Like I highly recommend it. Take advantage of it. Like most schools offer tutoring for free. Like I would go with just the simplest problems and even just like study there. And in the long run, it would really help just because like anytime I have those like small questions, the small details in order to put everything together, I have someone there that's like been through it. Also, you could also network through tutoring. That actually happened to me. Like I know this was a previous like segment, but I networked through tutoring and I got a tutoring job later on. Like I'm still in that job, and a lot of my friends in medical school I met through tutoring. So they kind of helped me out, like with a bunch of different classes. They offered material that they used before, so like tutoring, you could also network there. And after that, I would also, before an exam, I would go through practice problems. So you don't want the first question you see be on the exam. You want to do practice problems because most of these questions on the exam aren't just straightforward, like, do you know the material? It's do you know how to use the material in different situations? So you want to do practice problems beforehand before going into a test. So I think those were the most beneficial tips I learned throughout my like undergrad career, and also just to add on the dual credit. So I don't know if any of y'all know what dual credit is or if your school offers it, but I would recommend it. It helped me a lot because it was very cheap, especially if you have a fee waiver. I know if you are like come from a disadvantaged background, you can get a fee waiver and you end up paying like $20 for a course as opposed to taking that same course in college and maybe paying like $500 for it, right? And then you save a lot of time too. And sometimes it's easier. I thought it was easier in high school than it was in college. Like I had a lot of friends that still had to do those courses. Those are like basics, like English, history, and government. You have to do those in college, so you can't just sign up for the high school dual credit. And also look up at the school you want to go to just to make sure they do accept dual credit. I think that's...
Thank you so much, Drew. We're going to move on to Sydney now. So when you first start off college, a lot of students have no idea what they want to study. I know when I started, I was just like, maybe I want to go to medical school. Maybe I want to be a teacher. Maybe, I don't know. I had no idea, right? So Sydney, can you talk about how you decided what you wanted to major in and how that experience was like for you?
Yeah, so applying to college, I knew that I wanted to study biology, but I wasn't really sure about like the career going into that. So what I explored was a lot of careers, like career paths based on biology. And I figured out pretty early on that I didn't want to do medicine, and I was more interested in like knowledge creation. So I'm really interested in research. And so like in high school, I didn't have much research experience. So it was pretty difficult figuring out what like classes to take and how to
just like set myself up with the courses so that I can have opportunities and find the right like job experiences for the summers or just part-time jobs on campus. But I think also figuring out the major that I want to do, I thought about what I enjoyed learning about in high school, the type of, like, the aspects of the career that I want. Like, I want to be active. I don't want to sit in an office or a lab all day. So I figured out, like, right when I got to campus that I wanted to study ecology and evolutionary biology, and which is a pretty small department at Reyes, so I didn't really know anybody else studying it. I didn't know any of the professors or anything about how to get involved in research. But I think being able to learn or try new courses and just talk, like reaching out to professors and talk about their research, or reaching out to other students and just talking about the classes that they've taken is really important for figuring out what you want to do, because I think like you have 4 years at college or more or less depending on like random programs, but it's really important to choose the courses that that will help you later on, because if you spend a year thinking you want to study one thing, it is really difficult to switch, and you have to take more courses and spend a lot more time in classes, and that takes time away from looking for jobs or looking for internships. So I think spending a lot of time figuring out what you want in a job and then finding something to study that is very interesting to you is important.
Thank you so much, Sydney. And now, Crystal, who is also a senior at U of H, and then you just got a job in consulting, right?
Yes, I did.
Congratulations. Can you talk about deciding where to live? It can be a really tough decision, especially if you just, let's say you're from Houston, and you just decide to stay here. Do you live at home? Should you go into the dorm? Should you live with friends? Can you talk about what that experience was like for you, and any suggestions that you have for students trying to decide about where they want to live?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I attend the University of Houston, and I live in Houston. So my house is literally like 30 minutes away from Houston. So you might be asking yourself, why did I decide to live on campus, even though like I'm a native Houstonian and all that. So I was very fortunate to live on campus my 4 years, and I also lived off campus a little bit after Hurricane Harvey happened my freshman year, and then after COVID happened this past year. So with that, for me, I'll start off with my experience with living on campus. It was a very fun experience. Even after Hurricane Harvey, I was able to dorm with, I had one roommate and then 2 suite mates. We shared a restroom and a sink. And it was very fun. You get to meet a lot of people when you're on campus. A really great thing about living on campus is the flexibility. So sometimes I would wake up 10 minutes before class, run to class, and then get there. Whereas if you're living off campus, you might have to drive there. You waste time in traffic. Sometimes you're late there. So that was a really great option for me, since I was able to just run to class, and then sometimes after class I would take a nap before my other class. But that was a really great experience for me. Also with roommates, I got to know how to live with other people, which for me was very difficult, coming from my family where I had my own room, going to a suite with other people who like to have different temperatures in the house. And then one of them I was a night owl, so I studied all through the night. But my roommate, she fell asleep like at 9 p.m. So I had to find out how to study in a study hall outside of the room. So it was just a really fun experience. You get to really find yourself and what you like, what you don't like, that kind of thing.
but what it comes with is the price. So it was very costly to live on campus these 4 years. And for me, I was very privileged to get scholarships that covered everything. But for some of my friends, they had to go off campus for a bit because of how costly it was. So I would say a great option to do if you're in that situation about that cost is talk to your parents, fill out their scholarships, find out if you can get any loans or anything like that if you do really want to live on campus. Another thing I want to talk about is, for me, it was very hard to live on campus that first year because I had to talk my parents into it. So coming from a Hispanic household, my mom and dad were like, well, why are we going to let our little daughter go into college? What if something happens to her? That kind of thing. So for me, I really had to talk them into it. And it was a process of like my whole senior year in high school, talking to them over and over again, bringing it up. I want to live on campus for these reasons, and have like really clear reasons why you want to, so that you can convince them. And then while I was on campus, calling them every day really helped, because they were like, what is happening to her? She's always been here with us, that kind of thing. So that was really important as well. And then I know some people that also lived on campus for like the 4 years, and sometimes that's beneficial for you because of the price, so if you want to save money. And then also for me, it was very important to be with my family when Hurricane Harvey happened, because our house got flooded, so I really had to help them with my little brother and my little sister. And then I had to be there as well when COVID started, because we didn't know what was going to happen and stuff. So you really have to talk to your parents and think about yourself, what you want out of your college experience. And that would be my tips.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And to finish off the panel, do the three of you have any ending words, any pieces of advice? Both Joe and Crystal, you're about to finish college. So biggest lessons that you learned. In Sydney, you're just starting college. So what have you learned? Any last words?
Yeah, I think adaptability is the one thing that I would give advice to all of y'all. It's very important to be adaptable. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing, so you just have to go with the flow, and hope everything comes out well, and just be very open, take all the opportunities that come to you with you.
I would say, as you're finding your place on college, community, and academic interest, just like every opportunity that you find and that you're the least bit interested, just talk to people about their experiences and figure out what you like about what other people have gone through that you want, and just find new opportunities.
So my piece of advice would be, don't compare yourself to other people, especially in college. Like, even in the same class, same major, same everything, everyone learns at different rates. Like, go at your own pace and see what works for you. Like, if you like to study in a group, or if you like to study alone, at what time of the day, or how far along you are before an exam. Like, try not to compare yourself to others. I know it's hard, but it's only gonna bring you down. Like, you're just gonna psych yourself out before an exam or something. So yeah, just work at your own pace and just worry about yourself.
Thank you all so much. You can get a round of applause. All right. So now I'm actually going to open it up to our high school students. If y'all have any questions for any of our panelists, let me know. Just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic over to you. Any questions? You must be curious about something. No? Nothing? Or are y'all just being shy? A little shy? All right, well, at the end, if you do have any questions and you're too shy to ask them, feel free to go and ask any of the panelists, and I'm sure they will all be happy to talk to you. All right, this has been great. It has been so inspiring to hear so many of y'all's stories. Thank you so much for taking the time to volunteer and talk to us about everything that you shared. Now we're going to close it off with Canales. He's the executive director of Latinos for Education, and he's just going to share a little bit about his story and why education is important to him.
Morning, everyone. My name is Andy Canales, Executive Director of Latinos for Education here in Houston, a nonprofit that is focused on developing more Latino leadership in the education sector. Now, my passion for education stems from where I come from, and that starts with my parents. Both my parents immigrated from El Salvador in the 1980s, fleeing a brutal civil war that killed over 75,000 people. They came to Los Angeles, and that's where I was born and raised. I grew up in the inner city. My mom was a housekeeper. My dad was a mechanic. And growing up in the inner city LA, especially during the 80s and 90s, was not easy. I went to schools that were pretty challenging, and something that was very eye-opening for me growing up was during the summers, my mom used to take me to clean houses with her in all of the ritzy and wealthy parts of Los Angeles, Beverly Hills, Malibu, Pacific Palisades. And we didn't have a car, so we'd take the bus and wake up at 5 in the morning to catch the bus from the inner city to all of those areas. And in a way, that experience was eye-opening because it gave me a contrast, a completely different world than the one I was growing up in. And I'll never forget growing up, being inside the bus and going by UCLA and asking my mom, "What is that?" I learned that it's not pronounced UCLA, as I would talk with my mom. I learned over time it's UCLA, not UCLA. But I was intrigued by that. It was my first time actually seeing a college. And then I would see Pepperdine in Malibu. And if you're not familiar with Pepperdine in Malibu, Pepperdine is a college campus, 800 acres, nestled on top of the Santa Monica Mountains, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. So I want you to imagine being in the classroom and the view is the Pacific Ocean. And my mom and I would take the bus on Pacific Coast Highway to go clean mansions. And so I was very intrigued, and that became my dream. My dream became to go to one of those schools one day. But that dream was a far-fetched reality given the conditions that we were growing up in. And when I was in high school, my parents managed to save enough money to buy a house in North Hollywood, which is like a little suburb of Los Angeles. And I can't even believe they did that, because now I have friends with college degrees that can't buy in that neighborhood, but they bought a little tiny house. And where they bought the house, it zoned me to one of the worst performing middle schools in Los Angeles County. And I figured that out. And I told this to my 6th grade teacher at the time. So this is actually middle school. And I don't know how I figured this out, but my 6th grade teacher, well, let me backtrack. So I got zoned to one of the worst performing middle schools, and had my parents bought a house a few blocks over, I would have been zoned to one of the best performing middle schools in Los Angeles. And my parents didn't know this, right? So I was talking to my 6th grade teacher and somehow figured out that she was married and divorced to the principal of that school that was the best performing middle school. So I managed to get a meeting scheduled. So I'll never forget that day. And what I did to prepare for that meeting was every time in the elementary I would win the student of the month or perfect attendance. Do you guys still have those certificates from elementary school perhaps? Well, I had them, and I put them all in a folder, and I took them with my mom, and I met with the principal at Walter Reed Middle School. And my mom and I made our case about why they should let me into the school, even though I wasn't zoned to that school. And the principal said that I can't do that because this is not your school. You're not zoned to the school. And I remember my mom in broken English trying to make the case that I deserved just as any other kid, to go to a good school. I didn't want to get zoned to the worst performing middle school in LA County, one of the worst. And unfortunately, we weren't successful. And we got turned away. And my mom and I started crying. And the principal started crying. He's like, I wish I could let you in, but I can't. And so we got turned away, and I went to middle school. And I didn't learn anything for the next 2 years, 7th grade and 8th grade. And then I got an application in the mail to apply for different types of schools, magnet schools, charter schools. I didn't know what any of those were, but I knew they were better, the magnet schools. So I applied to a magnet school that was an hour away, and I signed on behalf of my mom. And I told them, hey, by the way, I signed up, okay. Because I knew my mom's signature, my dad's signature, because I would read the papers in English, applications in English, and then sign on their behalf and then explain to them. And I got into that magnet high school. And that was what I called my ticket out of poverty, the beginning of it. So I go to this high school, and I meet Miss Jackson, who is the only college counselor for 2,500 students. And I became friends with Miss Jackson, and I said, my dream is to go to UCLA or Pepperdine one day. And I would always talk about it. And then fast forward junior year, Pepperdine contacted every college counselor in LA and said, you can choose one student to come study at Pepperdine for 1 week before their senior year. So she said, oh, I know who to choose because this kid's always talking about Pepperdine and UCLA. So I go to Pepperdine, and I meet the chancellor who hosted that program. It was a leadership program. And I went up to him, and I shook his hand, and I tried to make a connection. My name is Andy, Somewhere High School. Thanks for having us. Whatever. So then I finished the program. I fell in love with Pepperdine. I was like, I gotta come here. So I go back to high school, and I actually wrote a letter to him. Now I don't know how I was thinking about this stuff, but I wrote a letter to him thanking him for the program, and he wrote me a letter back. And I started my senior year in high school, and I applied to Pepperdine, and I didn't get it. And I said, I'm gonna get into this school if it's the last thing I do. So I called the chancellor's office. And if you don't know what the word chancellor, the chancellor is like the president of the university. It's a really important person. And I just called his office. I was 17 years old. And I said, hi, I'd like to schedule a meeting with the chancellor. And the secretary was like, who is this? And so I couldn't get a meeting with the chancellor, right? So I just did what a bold and fearless 17-year-old would do, probably like you all. And I just drove to Pepperdine, and I went to his office. And the secretary was so impressed because of the 250 young people that participated. I'm pretty sure I was the only person that was done. So she was taken aback. So she's like, I'm going to schedule a 30-minute meeting with the chancellor, and I want you to come back. So I leave, and I go back, and I sit with the chancellor, and I remember that meeting like it was yesterday, because it was like 2 chairs like this. I was sitting right there, he was sitting right there, and the view of the Pacific Ocean. And I said, it's been my dream to come to this school since I was 9, 10 years old. I used to clean houses with my mom down the street. And I applied to Pepperdine, and I didn't get in. But I believe that this school is a good fit for me for these reasons, and I'm a good fit for this school for these reasons. And I said, I'm going to submit my application again, and I'd like to ask you to write me a letter of recommendation. And I'm sure this guy was like, who is this guy? He didn't even know me, right? I was just, and I was like, write me a letter of recommendation to get into this damn school. So he said, yes, I'll write you a letter of recommendation. So he wrote me a letter of recommendation. I submitted my application again, and and I attended Pepperdine, which was a dream come true. And there's something here that I want you to always remember. There's two things. Number one, don't give up. There's always going to be setbacks, but don't give up. But the second thing is, don't be afraid to ask. And one of my favorite examples to help you understand this is, I listened to this podcast of this man that started his business, and he realized that in order to be successful in starting a business, and pretty much in doing anything, you're going to have to be comfortable with rejection. But getting rejected does not feel good. Whether it's asking someone on a date, whether it's asking for a refill at a restaurant and getting denied, whether it's asking for an extra scholarship to help you pay for the costs of going to college, hearing a no is not going to feel good. So what this man did, which I would encourage you to do, is he did an experiment where he said, I'm going to ask 100 people for different things, and I'm just going to, even if people keep saying no, I'm just going to get more comfortable with being rejected. And the more that I do it, the easier it's going to feel to just ask for things, and even if people say no, to be okay with that. So he went randomly to someone on the street and said, hi, my name is so-and-so, can I borrow $100? Person said no. He went to a restaurant and ordered burger and fries and a Coke. He finished his meal and then he went to the counter and said, hi, can I get a hamburger refill? And the cashier was like, what's a hamburger refill? And he said, it's when you get another hamburger. And he was like, okay, well, let me check with my manager. Sure. He went to his neighbor and he said, he knocked on his neighbor and he said, can I plant a flower in your garden? How creepy is that, right? Someone knocks on your door and they're like, can I plant a flower in your garden? And the neighbor said, no. And then he said, why not? That's always great. When someone says no, why not? And the neighbor said, because I don't really like gardening, but Susie in front of us loves gardening. And I bet you if you went and asked her, she would say yes. So he gave her a reference. He gave her feedback, right? I can't do this for you, but here's what you can try. So he went and he knocked on Susie's door. Said, can I plant a flower? She's like, yeah, come on in. Let's plant a garden. And of the 100 people that he asked for random things, 51 people said yes. Not bad. 51 people said yes. And so the moral of the story that I hope I'm leaving you with is to not give up. Just like I had the courage to ask the chancellor for something, ask for things. All people can say is no. And that's going to be really important for your career, where you are now, what you decide to do next. So with that, I'll leave you. Thank you for your time this morning, and best wishes on your journey.
Again, I just want to say thank you to everyone that took the time to be on our panels, for the students for coming on a Saturday morning. That shows dedication already. And that's a wrap. Thank you. And you can And we just want to say thank you to our volunteers. So we just have a certificate for all of you. So Paula, Mariana, oh yes, we're gonna get a picture after we give it to everybody. So yeah, and then for our high school students, there's lunch. There's box lunches available, so y'all can choose which one.
Sí.